Roma, really excited to be chatting with you today about the Baxters. This is a beloved book series that you have made into an incredible TV show. How did you come upon this project?
Billy, I came into the Baxters book series as a reader, as a fan of the books. A friend had given me the very first book in the series, and now there's like 26 or 27 books in the Baxter series written by the amazing Karen Kingsbury. And I was on a plane ride from Los Angeles to New York City. As you know, that's 5 or 6 hours, depending which way the wind is blowing. And I thought I might get a nap on the plane, but I just sort of opened the book and started reading, and I could not put it down. It was just such a page turner. And as I was reading it, I thought, this needs to be a TV show. It's like rich. The stories are rich, and the characters are beautifully defined. And it celebrates this family. We get to see a family, not a perfect family in any way. They're flawed like everybody is, but they are a family of faith. And we rarely get to see that on television.
Yeah, no, we rarely get to, and I have had the chance to watch the first two seasons of it, and this is a project that appeals to all people. The show, and obviously there are faith themes in it, and as you said, they're not perfect, but it's so relatable because we all go through difficult things in life, and you watch the characters' journey through them. How tough was it? Because you've done a lot of projects, and in fact, the hardest project I would imagine, at least from my purview, taking the Bible and taking those characters, people who really lived, and bringing them to life. You've done that with the Bible series and AD. But in this case, you have a book series with popular characters. How tough was it to translate those characters and do them justice into the big screen, into the small screen, rather?
Yes, well, we had a good bunch of writers. We sat around and brainstorming. There were obviously key elements to each character that needed, in order to be truthful to those characters, had to be on the screen. The books have a lot more information, obviously, than we could condense into each episode. But it was making sure that we got that we set the story straight, because fans of the Baxter's book series are serious fans. Karen has like 25 million or more books of this series in print. And,
Wow.
in order to honor those fans and to respect people who have followed these stories for years, we needed to make sure that we were accurate. Karen, of course, herself was a consultant on the piece, and she was readily available to me when I would call her up and say, we thought we might adapt this direction, and how would you feel if we updated this? And so she was very supportive and very encouraging each step of the way.
You've done so much, and you and I have connected so many times over the years as you've worked on different projects. You obviously, touched by an angel down the line through the Bible, as I mentioned. When you think about your impact and legacy on entertainment, in 20, 30, 50 years, what do you want that legacy to be?
Gosh, well, I think, my commitment has always been through the company that I started with my husband, Mark Burnett, was when we started Lightworkers, our commitment was to tell stories of inspiration, stories that uplifted, stories ultimately that were about hope. And that hasn't wavered, even from serious dramas through to, more lighthearted soap operas. The through line that weaves, that connects, I think all of my work has been a message of hope. From my days as an actor on Touched by an Angel, and then through the books that I have written over the last few years and the projects that I have produced. If you remember, last Easter on Prime Video, I had the Dennis Quaid hit On a Wing and a Prayer. And so there's that's the constant theme. So, that our mantra over here has always been that it's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. And so I would hope maybe that would be the footnote if people mentioned my work, that I came into this faith and family space, and that that my job was, if God is the light, we are the workers. So, that was my assignment, to be a light worker and to glorify God with the work that I do.
Well, and you have done that so well. I mean, I can't overemphasize how much you and Mark did for this space, because right now we're watching these films, these shows, we're talking about the Baxters right now, all of these things that have been done. Hollywood's gone through ebbs and flows. Back in the olden days, a long time ago, biblical epics were a thing, but that went away. And it really wasn't until, 2010, 2011, 2012 that this started to sort of come back again. But you guys kind of single-handedly went out there and made the Bible series happen, and it was a massive series. Talk a little
Yes.
bit, talk a little bit about that process, because I know it was not easy making that happen.
No, it required such boldness and such courage, really. I mean, I think for me, the lesson was to remember that courage wasn't the absence of fear. The courage is having fear, which sometimes is very healthy to have, but still deciding to move forward. When we decided to do that, a lot of people in our industry had advised us not to. They said, sure, who's going to want to see the Bible on TV? And it turns out that over 100 million people wanted to see the Bible. I mean, I think we always underestimate the faith audience, particularly in the United States. And there's some disrespect maybe from Los Angeles to the rest of the states, thinking the flyover states. And it's like, oh, really? I think it's just the heartland. And people do want stories of hope. People want to, see themselves. Even in Bible stories, you can see yourself play out in some of the characters, certainly in the redemptive elements of it. What I loved about Baxter's, Billy, is that this first season was called the Redemption Series, is based on the book. And so those are the kinds of stories I think that we continue to be interested in. But yeah, the Bible was a daunting, exciting, but very daunting project to tackle. Mark and I, we had over 40 consultants, philosophers, theologians, pastors, bishops. And the curious thing was that even amongst that group, we didn't have full agreement within the group. And so, at every moment you think, oh my gosh, if this small group that we are working with can't agree, how is this going to be received? And so we just continue to pray our way through it, and and it turned out better even than we might have hoped that it would. And I still run into people who say that they saw the series and that they brought a friend who didn't know anything about the Bible, had never opened a Bible, but they were receptive to seeing drama on TV, and it brought people home to the Lord, which also was a remarkable part of that.
Yeah. I mean, and, again, by doing that series, I would imagine it's tough, when you're in Hollywood or any industry, and obviously you and Mark being so well respected, I'm sure it was tough to have people say, don't do this. I'm sure there's elements of, and I can't speak for you, but, is this going to affect me in any way? I want to do this project. I'm being called to do it.
Absolutely. But, here's the thing, like, I think, we are people of the Bible. We read our Bibles. We are people of faith, but I don't think either my husband or I would claim to be experts on the Bible, So, you've heard it say that God doesn't always call the qualified, but he qualifies the called, And so I don't know that we were the obvious couple, that were the likely people to bring the Bible to television for a generation. But somehow we managed to do it. We worked very hard. We shot in Morocco, and it was a hard shoot. It was a challenging shoot. Not the least of which was the weather, the climate over there. I still get sent projects of biblical stories, and I think, I just don't know if I can do another donkeys and sandals, because I came back from Morocco, which was beautiful, by the way, but I had dust in places that I didn't even know existed. And so I'm like No, I want to tell contemporary stories that that are relatable. And ever since my time on Touched by an Angel, people still, even though that show was so many years ago, it still plays in reruns and it still touches people right in their hearts. People say, when is there going to be another show like Touched by an Angel back on TV? And I really think that The Baxters is that show. While it doesn't have angels in the central role, it has people who care about each other. It has people who would think nothing of holding hands and praying in a scene. And that's what I think is unusual. I don't think it's specific only to Christian people, though they are a Christian family, because I think families everywhere will identify with the struggles that this family go through. The difference just is when the Baxters are brought to their knees by life and life struggles, when they're down there, they pray. And, for as people who pray, to see prayer warriors like that is lovely. I think for people who believe, to see people who believe as characters in a TV drama. I don't know why it's as rare as it is, but it is rare to see. And I've been, because the show has been playing for a few weeks now. So the feedback I've been receiving is people, first of all, they're just binging their way through it. Some people have already finished the whole thing. They're just, because I made that first episode was a regular length episode, but after that, they're short episodes. So it's like they're snackable, bingeable, and each one was designed to have like a cliffhanger moment so that
Yeah,
you're
you
like,
don't want it to end, Roma. You don't want it to
yeah,
end. You're watching it and you're
one more
like, no, my kids are like, no, no.
That's right. What's going to happen next?
Yeah.
And that's only Karen Kingsbury can create that kind of drama. And it plays out like a soap opera, but because of the themes, the redemptive themes within it, we decided to call it a hope opera. And because it's like with each episode, these people find they find their way home. They find their way home to each other as a family. And some of the characters who have gotten lost on their spiritual journey find their way home to God as well.
Yeah, that, and I don't want to, no spoilers, but that was really, because I was about to say something like, don't say that, you're going to spoil it. But, some of the characters watching that's also very relatable. Parents whose kids have sort of wandered or left the faith and they're praying for them and they're hoping for them to return. That is a really powerful part of the series. And with that, I wanted to ask you, because obviously as a Christian coming into this and making this, how did it impact your faith, just putting this all together and releasing it? What was that process like for
Yeah.
you?
Well, I have to tell you, again, this was also a challenging project to get made, because I think that some of the distributors might have wished that it wasn't as Christian as it was. They like the family drama aspect of it, but did they really have to be a Christian family drama? And, one of my promises to Karen Kingsbury when I asked her if she would entrust me to be, a producer to bring this to the screen, that was one of my core agreements with her, was that I wouldn't try to dilute that in any way, it's a key part of who the Baxters are and how they, who they are in the world and how they love each other. And so there were certainly challenges along the way and delays along the way. But and there were moments when she and I would be on the phone praying together, saying, I wonder why this has to be so hard. Like, is this, why does this have to be so hard? And then just trusting that it would, that the Lord would find a way and that the timing would be the perfect timing. So, for such a time as this, I can only assume that that is the case. And here we are. But it has been, so it was a little bit, not a test of my faith, but it was certainly a test of my patience, along the way. And,
Yeah.
and my, cast are amazing. This young group, Ted McGinley, a seasoned pro, I stepped into playing the role of Elizabeth Baxter myself, although I originally hadn't planned to. Karen Kingsbury said, "Would you not do this? I think you'd be perfect." And then we gathered this lovely group of up and coming young stars to play the Baxter kids. A lovely group that, talented, attractive, energetic, and then I reached out to my friend Kathy Lee Gifford to ask her if she would guest star in a role that was crafted really for her. And her daughter, Casty Gifford, was already cast as a series regular playing the girlfriend of Luke Baxter. So it's like a lot of young energy. That was very fun for me to suddenly be the matriarchal figure of this great bunch of kids. And I think when you're casting a family, you have to make sure that it's believable for an audience that these people are actually related to each other. So I think you can see, particularly with the girls, the Baxters have 5 adult children, 4 daughters and a son. And I think you can see a physical resemblance.
Well, your daughter is actually in it as well. Your actual daughter.
My own daughter, Riley, plays my youngest Baxter daughter, Erin. And that was a very fun experience for us to get to work together. We were joking that it was such a stretch for us, like to imagine that we were a mother and daughter. But so that was very special. And she had a very special relationship with Emily, Ali, and Macy, who play the girls. So we all remain on a group text chain, and friendships are formed, I think, on series that will last and endure for a lifetime. So I bet you each of these actors will have great careers. And, I can say, we had you when you were at the very beginning of that in the Baxters. So
I love that. Well, I have one more question for you, and then I will let you go. And my final question, people are going to be asking this because the show is so good. Any chance for a season 4 in the future? Would you be open to it?
Yes. Well, I think we all would be open to it. We actually already have a season 4 written. So hopefully, for fans out there who are watching, reach out to Prime Video and say that you've loved it. That would be the most helpful thing. Maybe to find us on social media, and to, back in the day when I was on Touched by an Angel, we used to get fan mail, back when people still wrote letters, and fan mail would come to us personally, to myself, Delarice, and to other members of our cast. But they would also go to CBS, that they would say, "We love this show. Please keep it on the air." Because how else would the networks or the streamers know to get feedback? And I think that feedback now arrives through social platforms. So, please, for anybody who's watching, who would love to see more, let Prime Video know. Please reach out to me on my social platforms and leave some comments, and we can, I'd say never say never. Never say never,
Never
right?
say never. I love that. That's a good.
That's the answer to everything, Billy.
That is. And it's a good.
I can say there's no definite plan in the works, but never say never.
Never say never. Go out, write your letters, reach out to Roma on social, and of course, go and stream The Baxters on Prime. Roma, as always, it was wonderful chatting with you today.
Lovely to see you, Billy. All the best, and to your family too.